Hello, so this tutorial is part of our Python for Beginners tutorial series, and today we are learning about casting. So by the end of this tutorial, you'll be able to convert a variable from one data type to another, and that's what casting is all about. So casting in Python is the process of converting a variable from one data type to another. In Python, this is often done to ensure that variables are of expected data type for operation. So that's all casting is about. And to begin with, let's look at the most common data types in Python. So in Python, we have three most common data types, and the first one here is int. So int is for integer data types. We also have float, which is basically for floating point number. So for instance, an example of a floating point number could be 5.6, and for an integer it could be a single 6. Okay, so the third one we have is string, and this is what some string of words. So for example, your name. Okay, so your name is a string of word. We can have a string which in a form of numbers. Okay, so we can have 79 as a string. Once it's in this particular quotes is a string. So these are the most common data types in Python. All right, so in order to understand casting, let's first create a problem. Let's say we want to add two numbers together. In this case, the numbers are x and y. So we'll say our x here is equal to the string representation of 5, and our y here is equal to the string representation of 8. So the thing is, now we want to add these numbers together, and adding 5 and 8, we expect to get 13. So let's see if we add it, we'll get that same result. So I'll begin by just printing the sum of 5 and 8. Okay, so I'll just do print x plus y, and when I run this, I'm expecting 13 to be the result. But in this case, you can clearly see that what the answer I'll be getting is not 13. Instead of 13, I'm getting what, 58. And this is because I'm not adding integers together, I'm adding strings. Okay, so what if I want to get 13? What should I do? All right, before I even get to that, let me show you when you are adding string in Python, what you are simply doing is that you take the first string. In this case, we have 5, and you are adding the second string to it, which is 8. So you get 58. So if you want this to result to 13, then we need to cast both x and y to integers so that we can be able to add 5 plus 8. And to do that, we will say, okay, our x is equal to an int of what, x, and what we are saying is that whatever s was, we are casting it to an integer. And we can do the same thing for y. So we also do y is equal to what, int of what, y. And this is what we are saying. We are just saying that, okay, whatever our y was, which is a string here, we are casting it to what, an integer. And this is what casting can help you to achieve. So now I'll borrow this print function at the top here, and what I'm going to do is to paste it here and run this code again. So in the result here, you can see the one which we have, which was a string, we've got 58, and the one we've casted to integer is 13. So you should be very mindful when we are working with data in Python, because sometimes you need a result like this and not this. So imagine if you are running an online store and you are using string representation without casting them. Instead of people paying, let's say, for 13 cedis or $13, they will end up paying for $58. And in this case, you can cause a lot of problem. You drive customers away from your website. So casting can help you to overcome that. And I also said that we can cast to floating point numbers. So instead of casting to integer, we can cast these same numbers to float. And to cast to float is the same thing. So in this case, we'll do x is also equal to what, float of x. And when we even print x, what we'll get is that we'll get whatever x was, which is 5 here, and we'll get 5.0. okay, so float, we just convert this 5 to float, which it will be 5.0. You can also cast from integer to a string. So you have the liberty to also do that same thing. So you can have a number which is a string and you cast it to an integer. So for now, let's try to cast a number from a string to a float. So for that, I'll comment all of this and I'll come down here and I'll say, okay, I have a number here and this number is equal to string of 1, 2, and 3. And to cast this to a floating point number, what I'll do is that I can name another variable called numFloat. This is equal to what? Float of my number. And this is going to take this string and cast it back to a floating point number. So I can now print this float or numFloat to see what I'm getting. And in case you want to verify this, right after defining number, you can also print the type. Okay, so in Python, when you print the type of that particular num, it will give you the data type. Okay, so in this case, this is a string, so we can do the same thing, and we can also print after casting to verify if we have been able to convert this to a float. So here I'll just do numFloat. So okay, so let me run this and let's verify if we have been able to convert the string 1, 2, 3 here to what? A floating point. So you can see first I got class string. That means this num variable here is what? String. And from there I've been able to convert it to float and I've printed the type of it again, and here I got class float. From there I just print the number and you can see instead of 1, 2, 3 it converted it to float, so I got 123.0. okay, so that's how you can also convert from string to float. Let's try to also convert from integer to string. So let's say we have an integer, and in this case we have an integer called x, and this is equal to 67. So let's try to first print the type so that we can verify. So I can just print type of x, and after printing the type I'll also come down here and convert x to a string. So I'll just say x underscore str. In this case, x string is just a variable choice, and I'll just say is equal to what? String version of whatever our x is. So we are casting this integer value to a string, and over here I can borrow this type once again to verify that. So I'll come down here and print what? Type of x string, and from here I'll go ahead and also print x string. So let me quickly run this and let's see what we'll get. First of all, let me clear the terminal and then I'll run this. So you can see from starting we have x to be an integer, which is true. From there we have casted x to what? String. So you can see now x is now a string because we are printing it here, and we are printing x, which is what? 67. So that's how easily you can convert from one data type to another. But one mistake you often run into is that you see a lot of people trying to convert numeric values. Okay, so they try to convert, let's say, ABCD to an int, and that will result in an error. So that will actually give you a value error. So let's try it. Let's say we have a number string str, and this is equal to some alphabet. So let's use ABC, and we are trying to convert this ABC to a number or to an integer. So let's do int underscore str. We are converting str to int, and this is equal to int of whatever num string we are having. So when we run this code will give us a particular error called the value error, because we are trying to convert ABC to an integer, which is not possible. Okay, so it's normally you get an error. So let me just run this. So this is the error we have gotten: value error, invalid literal for int with base 10. Okay, so normally you can't convert alphabets to an integer or even a float. Even when you try float, you still get that same error. So let's try it and let's see. Okay, so you can see we got basically the same error. All right, for bonus sake, let me also teach you one thing you should be mindful of. Let's say you have a number, a floating point number. So let's just call it x, and this x is equal to, let's say, 6.8. What do you think if we cast 6.8 to integer? What do you think we will get? So let's try that. So I'll just print it directly, print int of what? X. and let's see what we are going to get. So we are casting this float number to an integer, and you can see we only got 8. Okay, the 0.8 is gone. So you have to be very mindful when you are converting a floating number to an integer, or you are casting a floating point number to an integer. Normally you will get the first number. The numbers after the decimal place, you are not going to get any of them, so you should be mindful of this when you are working with casting, or you are casting float to integer. Okay, all right. Another reason why casting is important is that by default, when we want to accept value from a user, okay, so let's say we want a user to give us a number. So I'll just say number is equal to input, and over here in this input, we want to tell the user to enter some number. So just enter some number. Okay, all right. So after getting this number, I'll do some couple of things. First, I'll print the data type of this number. So we'll just print the type of this particular number we are getting. And can you guess the type? If you have gotten it right, congrats to you. So let's check. The type should be string. So enter some number, and I'll just enter 5, and you can see the type of this data is string. So the input function in Python always return to you a string. So when you take any number, so let's do this twice, so that we take two number and try to add them. So number, and I'll just do the second one, num, and then what I'll do is to also print number plus num to see the result I'll get. So I'll just print here number, and I'll add it to num, and let's see the result. So I'll run this once again, and for the first number I'll enter 5, the second number I'll enter 10. All right, so you can see the result here is 510, and this is because the input function by default is returning to you string. So whenever you are taking values from users and you are adding them directly, you should know you are adding strings directly. So the best thing to do is to cast these numbers if you want them to be integer. So one hack is that you can wrap this input function into an int. Okay, so thereby you are casting it directly. So right after receiving the numbers, you are casting them. So you can also do this. So these are some of the things you should be mindful of. So let's try this again and see if now we will be adding integers together. So I'll do 5, and I'll still do 10. And you can see now the result is 15 and not 510. So we got 510 because it was class string, but now we're casting whatever we are getting. So you can see right here we are getting class int. So you can see how helpful learning how casting works, and also learning how to cast data in Python is. So in summary, I would say casting is essential for converting data types in Python. So you can use float, you can use integer, and you can use strings for these particular conversions. Okay, and also be aware of potential errors when converting incompatible data types, just as the one we did. We're trying to convert alphabet to, let's say, a float or an integer. You should be very careful when you are doing that, because you're definitely going to get an error. So guys, this is all casting is about in Python, and I think if you have any question, you have to leave it in the comment section, and also share this video if you find it helpful for any of your friends who want to learn Python. Just share with them, and I'll see you in the next video.